Welcome to the Channel 99 Review Public Access Television for Albuquerque, New Mexico, Channel 27. My name is Mike Rivas. I'm your host.
And I'm your co-host, Troy Neely. We'd like to encourage our viewers to call with questions or comments. Our number is 292-3263.
The men's forum today features a discussion with Tim Lopez, who is the male educator from the Rio Grande Planned Parenthood program here in New Mexico. We're going to be talking about some new views on reproductive responsibility for today's men. We have a couple of tape segments for you. As always, we have a producer's commentary from producer Mike Kruchowski, and we'll be featuring a book review by a lady of a book called Father Loss by Elise Walkerman. It's a book about the impact that losing a father has on a daughter's psyche.
And before we get started, we'd like to introduce and thank the crew members up front. Director Dusty Arrington, CG operator Mike Kruchowski, who is also our audio operator and producer, our video operator Ann Reiner, floor director Seth Ritter, and camera operators Mark Farragle and Kathleen McMahon. And also, we'd like to begin saying the men's forum. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Valley of Fires, which you saw at the opening of the introduction. It's one of the themes that Channel 99 Review uses to discuss exploring life in New Mexico, the land of enchantment. As you've noticed, we use scenery from the land of New Mexico, land of enchantment. And I'd like to discuss a little bit about what we just used, the Valley of Fires. The Valley of Fires is located about 150 miles southeast of Albuquerque. Spanish explorers call the extensive lava flows here the Malpais, or otherwise the Badlands. The river of lava that flowed down this Valley of Fires erupted from a volcano about 7 miles south 1,000 years ago. The black ropey kind of lava extends through the valley about 44 miles north to south and averages about 3 miles in width. It's one of the youngest and best preserved lava fields in the United States. Valley of Fires provides a vivid example of the dynamic process that have shaped the face of the earth. Facilities at the park include camping and picnicking sites, restrooms, drinking water, and playgrounds. And that's enough from that.
I'd like to introduce our guest today, Mr. Tim Lopez. Tim is the full-time male educator at the Rio Grande Planned Parenthood program since December of 1990. He's a native of Albuquerque, graduating from Valley High School here, where he was a three-sport letterman. He's completing his degree in health education at the University of New Mexico at the present time. And are you married or single, Tim?
I'm a single man.
Still available for small parties and dinner after 6?
I sure am.
You bet. So we would like to thank Tim. The theme we're having today for being here with us, and we also have a young fellow named Rudy Silva, who is a student down at which high school was it?
Manzano High School.
Manzano High School, yes. Who's been involved with Planned Parenthood a little bit and looking at reproductive responsibility, which has basically been a woman's issue, or at least we've thought for a long time that women have been a little bit more responsible than men in relationships for contraception. So thanks for being here with us today, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Good to see you. Because of the continuing social conflict over abortion, Planned Parenthood is often at the center of controversy, and a lot of people think of Planned Parenthood only in terms of abortion. And of course, obviously, there's a lot more to the program than just that. And so I guess what I'm asking you, if you could tell us a little bit about Planned Parenthood's goals and philosophies, give us a little bit about it. The purpose and background would be great to have.
Okay, well, a little bit of the background since I've started working with Planned Parenthood, going on 6 months. I've found out that we do have a clinic that offers reproductive health care for anyone, from birth control to testing and treatment for sexually transmitted diseases. And we are just concerned about an individual getting the best health care that they can, and also for the department that I'm in, the the Department of Education it's primarily been ran by Linda Phillips Laher, our education director. And so what I do, I'm an educator, and I go out and teach sexuality to a variety of different groups and students, ranging from mid-school to high school to elementary age school kids. And talking on a variety of topics related to sexuality, from birth control to sexually transmitted diseases, to teen pregnancy, to mainly what I've been hired for on male responsibility and male issues. So, and that was something very new for me since I got my position. And actually, it's very rare to see a male educator out in the community teaching sexuality. So it's something that's very new, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. And
I think that's great stuff. You know, men often get the rap. You know, they look at us like we're just. A lot of times, people society sees men as just kind of sex crazed and out of control and not responsible, or you know, and it falls to women to make sure that there is some responsibility in the relationship, and that's not so true anymore. I guess with AIDS being one of the major diseases of our time, probably like the plague of the 90s or something.
Yeah.
Knowledge and information. I'm wondering, just off the top of my head, do you think that parents actually counsel youngsters? I mean, the average child coming up from say 12, 13, 14 on, do you think that they're getting adequate information at home?
well, from what I'm seeing, and since I've been teaching, the type of knowledge that the kids do have is very limited. Whether they're getting it from home or from school or wherever it may be, it's very limited. And there's a lot of misconceptions, especially for birth control and for teenagers that are sexually active. They have a lot of myths on thinking that they may not be able to get pregnant the first time they ever have sex. So I have and like I said, this is something very new for me to go out into the community and talk about sexuality and talk to especially young guys and see what kind of ideas what they have about sexuality in the 90s. And you were talking about earlier how we get the rap for not being responsible for our actions and not being responsible for using birth control.
I'd like your. Is it possible to get a? Is it possible to get a shot of this picture right here? I don't know if you guys can do it. It's just an afterthought, but I think it's just an absolutely great poster.
And exactly, because I do use this poster in most of my classes, and it says, "Would you be more careful if it was you that got pregnant?" And I tell these to the young teenage males. And their response is, well, of course. You know, I think I would be more careful if it was me that got pregnant. And I put it into them a situation where they have to really think about being careful when they are sexually active. It's this kind of stereotypes that the males and females have grown up with. But in the 1990s, men have to be more conscious of their behaviors. They have to be more conscious in practicing using birth control and using contraceptives, and also learning how to communicate and break down these barriers that men have been stereotyped with and grown up with, that they're not allowed to share their feelings or emotions, and they're not allowed to cry, and they're not allowed to, and they don't really think about using birth control. They really think it's up to the women.
Right.
It's a woman's responsibility. But in 1990, yes, we do have sexually transmitted diseases. We do have AIDS, that is a fatal disease in our society now. We do have a paternity test that proves who is the father that's been developed, and it's very accurate, and it's changing the way our society thinks, and especially now with the way Planned Parenthood hired me, a male educator, to make this more aware in our community and to our teenagers.
Right. I'm wondering, you're saying that the reason I asked you the question originally was because I suspected that that there wasn't a lot of information that young people were getting out there about sex, and some of the things that are affecting us. I'm wondering what you found are some of the biggest sexual myths or misconceptions that you've encountered in your work in the community.
I think going back to what you first asked about where do you think the kids learn most of their sexuality from? Right. When I ask them, they tell me that the majority of them say they learn it from their friends, their peers, and also from society, from the media, TV, the radio. When they walk out the door, the media and the society is, I think, really encouraging and pressuring our kids to be sexually active. Every time they turn on the TV or listen to the radio, it's geared towards selling something or towards something being sexual,
right,
to try to sell a product or whatnot. But
right,
they learn most of their sexuality from their peers in society. And going back to the myths and misconceptions, is that a lot of teenagers really have a lot of misconceptions on birth control. They have misconceptions thinking that they have to be a certain age to buy or to go to a clinic and to seek birth control, which they don't need to be any age. They could be any age they want to be. They also have misconceptions on when they are sexually active, that they may not create a pregnancy for the first time they are sexually active, or they just don't have the proper information.
right. You bet. What types? Interesting topic. My mind just spinning.
It is.
I wish we'd had a couple.
It really is.
I wish we'd had a couple hours, but to talk about this. The posters are just grand stuff there. What crosses my mind, of course, is that sex is used to manipulate people, and through the media. And I can well understand if you were a youngster how you get a lot of mixed messages from watching television or from magazine advertising, that kind of thing. It's something that's just dawning on me. What types of birth control or contraceptives are available presently for both men and women? Could you just kind of list those? I mean, if you were a woman, looking at contraception. I mean, you don't have to go into depth, but and for men also. Somebody told me there's what is it? There's an implant you can get in an arm or something.
Yes, that's a new type of birth control that's just been passed by the Food and Drug Administration 3 or 4 months ago.
Right. What's it called? Do you know?
It's called a Norplant.
Spell it for me.
N-O-R-P-L-A-N-T.
Okay.
But let me just go back a little bit.
Sure.
When I go out and talk to students and I do a class on birth control, and I'm talking to these students about birth control, and I show them my bag, and I have a little bag I carry with several different types of birth control methods, and I tell them that it's really interesting, first of all, to see a male talking about birth control and talking about a diaphragm and an IUD and these type of contraceptives, but also that I have in my pouch about 9 different types of birth control methods, but there's only one birth control method for a man, and that's a condom. So it just shows you that our society really gears women to using birth control, and that's how I think we have this idea that men should not have to worry about birth control, and it's mainly put more on women than it is on men. And when I also show that, when we looked at that poster earlier, and it shows the guy with the belly, and it says, "Would you be more careful if it was you that got pregnant?" And I asked him, "Well, what happened? What would you think about using a pill, an oral pill to take as a contraceptive for men?" And I asked the young men this question, and the majority of them say that they would use these type of contraceptives. So I think that's real interesting. But and the different types of contraceptives that we do have is one, the condom for males, and we have the birth control pills for women, an IUD, intrauterine device, the diaphragm. We have spermicides, the foam, vaginal suppository, and VCF. It's called a vaginal contraceptive film. And the newest one, the prescription type birth control method, is called the Norplant, and it's surgically implanted inside the woman's arm, just right inside.
Not the man's, the
inner arm.
woman's.
No, not the man's, the woman, exactly. So I would just be real interested. It would be really interesting for me to see this type of device used for a male, to kind of put more of the responsibility on men
Right.
using birth control.
Sure, sure. That's it's kind of interesting. I had the impression that it was available to men as well as women, but so Norplant is for women, not for men.
It's for women, yes. It's a 5-year birth control method that can be implanted. And
You know, women are often seem to be really concerned, and I understand why. If someone were going to place something inside my body and leave it there, I would be definitely interested in what it was. But apparently, women are real concerned about the kinds of effects that a lot of types of contraception have on them. Where they toxic shock types of things that. So I would, and I guess what I'm trying to say is that I suppose what I'm actually saying is that I would feel comfortable if it was available to men. As the other for men is vasectomy, which
or
is,
abstinence.
or abstinence. That's the other thing I wanted to. That's the other thing I wanted to bump off of you. Now, there are a lot of people who feel that, just for the sake of comment, that sex outside of marriage, and abstinence are the only ways to go and the only way to approach sexuality in America. But statistically, it appears that that's not working.
No, it's not.
It's and I wonder, do you think that if there were, what interests me is, if there were, in male-female relationships, men and women, if we could have relationships where we could meet each other's needs before we had sex with one another, I found a lot of times that it seems like with women, lately it's changed. Last 4 or 5 years it's changed. But man, at a certain point, in my younger days, that was the only relationship you could have was a sexual relationship. And realizing that you can have a friend, that you can have intimacy and sharing, that you can have a closeness and a warmth with women, outside of sexuality. They can go for a long time, as friends. And there are, I need women in my life a whole bunch on a daily basis. To get my needs met, and it's been really refreshing to me to realize it doesn't always have to be a sexual, contact, or that doesn't have to be the approach that you're using for the relationship. And I'm wondering if, as men and women and men pursue, their emotions and things, if at some point we might be able to work things out where sex is becomes a little bit more secondary in our relationships, and we're able to share and be intimate and a little closer with one another. I guess the big one is that, and the media does this, and then I run into women. The media objectifies women. They turn them into objects. They're not real. They're reduced to their sexual organs, and we got to change that somehow. And I'm not sure how to do it. But I think it's important that we realize that. And we have a tape queued, and it's our. Let me check that real. It's what I thought it was. It is our producer's commentary, in which he proposes that death is easier to take than actual involvement and coming down here and being on a show. Before we go to the tape, I'd like to mention that when we return, Troy will be talking to Rudy Silva, who's a student at Manzano, and sharing some information.
Hello, I'm Mike Kruchowski, producer of the Channel 99 Review. In addition to producing this program, I also coordinate a small men's support group, so I have occasion to talk to a good many men about the things they consider important. I frequently try to convince them to join our men's forum on the Channel 99 Review to share their thoughts, feelings, and fears. But my offer is often declined, generally with some vague excuse about having something else to do. In talking to these men, I've noticed an odd incongruity. Many of them could be described as stereotypical men, outwardly courageous and bold and assertive. Yet when it comes to the people and principles they hold dearest, it seems like many of them don't know the word gumption. They'd almost rather face the possibility of death, marching off to war or the nearest street fight, than to face the public and admit they have feelings, or that they faced unrecognized social problems, such as the sexual discrimination in our divorce courts. When I first arrived in Albuquerque 2.5 years ago, I tried vainly for months to contact the Albuquerque Men's Center. Finally, I phoned Don Chavez, then president of the National Congress for Men. Don told me the center had pretty much folded after legislative support had withered for a proposed New Mexico Commission on the Status of Men. This supposedly came about after Ms. Magazine had labeled the proposed effort as a bill for crybaby men. How sad that fear of being ridiculed could have such a drastic effect on the bill's sponsors, especially since the bill was an idea whose time had finally come. I understand the feelings of helplessness many men face. I've had those feelings myself many times before, and I understand how it's easier to silently swallow your pride, strike a tough pose, and act as if you haven't been hurt. Better to hurt silently with some appearance of pride than to admit defeat, even if only a temporary defeat. I think this is a major reason for the prevalence of the so-called deadbeat dad. When fathers know they don't stand a chance of getting custody of their children after a divorce, when they know their visitation can be withheld with impunity in order to inflict revenge, it often seems there's nothing left to do but avoid a fight they know they simply can't win. But there is hope for bringing balance to our society. If men will confront these fears of ridicule and humiliation, then stand up to be heard in forums like this. Many of you fathers would willingly sacrifice your own lives to save your children. Maybe it's time to consider sacrificing something a little less precious. Our men's forum is one place you can start making a difference for your children. Please come join us.
We'd like to welcome you back to the Men's Forum and remind all our viewers that this is a live call-in forum, and the number is 292-3263. Joining me now is Rudy Silva, a freshman at Manzano High School. He's taking the Planned Parenthood class underneath Tim. I'd like to welcome you to the stage, first of all. I'd like to ask you a few questions to start off here. How did you first become involved in the education program with Tim?
Well, our teachers had called around for some counselors to talk to us on sex education, birth control, and other things on sex.
Did you
and
guys
relationships.
Did you hear that it was coming to the classes before it actually came, or did they just surprise you and throw it on you in the class? Or?
Well, they told us before that they would be doing that.
Okay. What was everyone's response?
Well, everybody was mixed. They didn't, I guess.
A lot of joking and a lot of serious people.
Yeah.
Do you feel the girls took it more serious than the guys at first?
Yes.
You think so? How about now that the class has started, do you feel the guys are still joking around about it, or are the guys starting to get a little more involved, or are they starting to think about it now?
Well, the guys, they started paying attention, and they started taking it more seriously.
Have you noticed a change in any of your friends since they started the class as far as sex goes? You know, are they still the screaming men that they used to be, or have they started thinking a little more when they start talking about sex?
Well, I don't know most of the people in my class outside of school, but I think they're still the same as they
Still
were
the same
before.
right now? Yeah. Well, it's still something to think about, though, huh?
Yes.
Tim mentioned earlier that these new tests that they have for paternity are making it easier for doctors to find out who the husband actually is. What's your input on that? What do you think about that?
I think it's starting to make the guys think more and be more responsible on what they're doing, and making them just really think.
And doesn't really allow them to be, you know,
as free as they used to be.
It's over, it's over, it's not mine.
Yeah.
Could you tell us some reasons that today's men should be concerned about reproductive responsibility? You know, should be concerned, more concerned.
They should be more concerned because they're not just taking their own lives in their hands, but the other person's too.
Yeah, it's just mess up a whole life, huh? Who do you feel is more important in the control of birth in the parent program? The male or the female?
Well, I think they should talk about it and see which is best for them both. The pills, abstinence, condoms.
Yeah, because things can happen like you're in a situation where the girl really loves you and you're not ready, she wants to have a child to trap you, things like that. You should protect yourself just as well as her, because you know it's not a one-way thing. You know, you can be trapped as well as her getting pregnant. You know, so it's really something to think about. Not to mention AIDS nowadays. So, how do you feel about the program, the Parenthood program?
Well, they haven't heard about it. Don't talk to them that much because, like before, how they said in the other segment that the kids aren't talking to. Well, I don't talk to my parents about sex, and I don't feel free like to talk to my mom about anything that's on my mind. I'm like scared to talk to my mom, and I don't talk to my dad about anything that much, because he's like, you know, sometimes he doesn't, you know, he doesn't feel like he should tell me about how sex is and birth control, what's out there and stuff, so I can barely talk to my mom about it.
Okay, and seeing as you don't really talk to your parents about sex then probably, do you feel this class is important? Because there are probably a lot of teenagers out there who can't talk to their parents about sex, and all they get is rumors or conquers, you know, from their friends about sex. So do you think this class, do you think it'll get their attention too, those people who need someone to talk to and aren't upfront enough to go to someone?
Yes, I think they'll pay more attention because they can't talk to their parents, and that I think some of them now that they're beginning to realize that getting pregnant and getting a girlfriend pregnant is true and it can happen, and that they just start realizing it now.
Yeah. Is it a good class? Is it interesting? Does it have enough information, or are there still questions that you still would like answered?
Well, it's a good class. We asked questions. We wrote them on papers if we, couldn't ask them out loud. So if we didn't feel comfortable enough to ask questions out loud, we could write them on paper and give them to, and they would answer the questions in class the next week.
Yeah, I was noticing the picture back there. If we could get in on this picture, this if your girlfriend gets pregnant. What do you think about this picture? If you're right behind you, if your girlfriend gets pregnant, so do you. What does that mean to you?
That means that it's your responsibility to have not a say, but to take care of it, because it's not just her problem, it's yours too. And if you don't consider it a problem, just be there for her and do everything you can.
Yeah, so it's your child as well as hers. It should be that way. If you were to give someone your own age advice, what would you tell them? if they didn't know anything about Planned Parenthood, what would you tell them?
Well, I tell them that there's clinics out there that have information on contraceptives, and that it's out there that you can get it no matter how old you are, and you don't need no parents' permission, and that it's out there, and you just have to go out there and do it, because it's not going to come to you, and you just got to be more responsible.
Yeah. Do you find yourself thinking about it beforehand now, or is it still just something that the teenagers want to do? Do you think they think about it anymore? Because a lot of schools now have started this parenthood program and birth control.
Well, before I wouldn't take birth control too seriously, but now I do, because I know some my friends, they're pregnant, and well, they're pregnant, and I know that they weren't, I guess, using protection, and I'm just sad because they didn't go out there and try to protect themselves from getting pregnant.
Yeah. Okay. What about the wild teenagers that are in your class now? Are there still the hecklers that like take your concentration away from the teacher and make jokes and are real loud in class? Is it like a normal class environment, or is it taken a little more serious than some of the other subjects?
Some days it's taken more seriously than others, and other days it's just, just talking. And there's a couple of guys in the classroom that have kids, and now that we have this Planned Parenthood program in our classroom, that they're talking about what had happened to them. So, so they're serious, those guys.
Okay. And how long is this class? Is it 5 days a week? Is it every day?
It's 1 day a week, every week, and we have it's fifth and sixth period, 2 hours.
Fifth and sixth period, 2 hours. Okay. So your friends who are in the class, do they like it also?
Well, yes, they do, because they can talk to Tim and the other person that's there about things that they have on their mind. Any questions if they want, they can be answered.
Okay, we got a tape coming up. It's our Worth Reading tape. And today's tape is about the book Father Lost by Elise Wakerman. It's a book about how a daughter responds to being raised without a father. So that's worth reading today on.
Hello, I'm Mike Kruchowski. Welcome to another book review in our Worth Reading series. On May 18th, 1991, my friend Jim Pratt was killed in an auto accident in Salt Lake City, Utah. Jim died too young. He left behind his wife Judy and their daughter Rebecca, 5 years old. Today's book review is dedicated to the Pratt family, and especially to Rebecca, because we'll be looking at how this tragedy will have lifelong consequences for little Rebecca. The book is Father Loss by Elise Wakerman, and the author has subtitled her book, Daughters Discuss the Man That Got Away. According to the book's foreword, the subject of fatherless daughters has not attracted the attention of behavioral scientists. Although there has been some research on motherless children and fatherless sons, the only significant research about fatherless daughters was E. Mavis Hetherington's 1972 study of teenaged girls without fathers. It was precisely this void that Wakerman has attempted to fill, but I hasten to add that she had a personal void to fill as well. Her own father died when she was only 3 years old, and Wakerman says it wasn't until her college years that she could talk about her father's death with any degree of ease. Death isn't the only way a young girl can lose her father, though. Many other girls have lost their fathers through abandonment or divorce, and for them there is no death, no finality to mourn as they try to resolve their feelings. What Wakerman has found is that the loss of a father, regardless how it happened, is an experience that fundamentally shapes a girl's life and all her future relationships. The hidden emotional and psychological scars can reveal themselves, for instance, in a string of divorces or foundering relationships with men. Yet, even if a woman's relationships remain intact, there is a heavy emotional toll. As one woman put it, "In my fantasy, my father was perfect, the all-giving man." The strain this must place on a husband is obvious, because that's a difficult role for any other man to fill. The impact of father loss goes deeper, far deeper than might be readily discerned from these stories about luckless romances, however. Dr. Holly Barrett created a questionnaire for Wakerman's investigation, and more than 600 women replied. Although far from being rigorously scientific, the results show that a father's role is critical in developing a young girl's self-concept. Women whose fathers were present during their childhood were much more confident and had a more positive outlook on life, affecting their job performance as well as their personal lives. As one expert put it, fathers have an enormously important role to play in the socialization of liberated daughters. These results are consistent with other studies which have shown that fathers are not nearly as dispensable as some would have us believe. I plan to buy a copy of Father Loss for Jim Pratt's widow and his daughter, because it may help them understand the many obstacles Rebecca could face in the years ahead. Hopefully, Rebecca will be able to discuss her father's death calmly well before her college years. However, this book has something for all of us, something for the fathers out there, because it reaffirms what you felt deep in your heart for so long, that you really aren't discardable. In Barrett's words, what made the man who got away so important is precisely what makes the man who stays so important. There's also something for mothers who want to understand how their daughters develop a sound concept of self and femininity, something for the adult men and women who wrestle with stormy relationships that may have been caused in part by father loss, and something for the little girls like Rebecca, who never have the advantage of glimpsing what is ordinary and human in men, particularly in that oh-so-important man, the man that got away, father. So take a look at this very worthwhile book, available for the past several years in paperback from Henry Holt Publishing. It costs less than $10, and it's worth every penny of it.
Welcome back to the Men's Forum section of Channel 99 Review Public Access, Channel 27, Albuquerque, New Mexico. My name is Mike Rivas.
And I'm Troy Neely, your co-host.
And our guests today are Mr. Tim Lopez from the Rio Grande Planned Parenthood program and Rudy Silva, who's a student down at Manzano High School. We've been talking about reproductive responsibility in men, young and old. And we would like to urge you to remember that this is a call-in program. You can reach us at 292-3263. That's 292-3263. And as I often point out, that's this telephone right here. You could be on public access television. Your voice could be here. And we're always looking for input from you, so be sure and give us a call if you would, or if you have an interesting comment. Well, I'm not sure where to start. We've looked a little bit at purpose and background. We've looked at the fact that contraception has been considered a woman's issue, and we're talking about making it a men's issue, men being responsible. What are some of the reasons that men should be concerned today about reproductive responsibility, other than AIDS and got any comments on that?
Yes, I do, Mike. I think they should be, especially for young teenagers, they have so much, the potential out of any young student is there, but the potential and the opportunities, they may be taken away as immediately if they do create a pregnancy or if they do contract a sexually transmitted disease. I think they more so about the potential and the opportunities, because when I go out and talk to the kids and I tell them that what I've done and I'm real glad where I'm at right now, and I've had my opportunities and I was able to take advantage of these opportunities, going to college and playing football and doing things that I really wanted to do, and I was allowed to do because I wasn't postponed with becoming a teen parent. And I think while we do have the third highest teen birth rate in New Mexico in the U.S., a lot of teenagers are making really bad decisions when they choose to be sexually active and choose not to be protected or use a form of contraceptive. And I think the potential of the individual that may be lost when they do get stopped by becoming a teen parent.
Right. So it sure makes it, especially economically, it makes it very hard if you're trying to. Somebody told me that that AIDS is on the decline in the homosexual population of people, but that teens are statistically climbing faster than any other statistical group in America. Had you heard that?
And also the other heterosexual populations also.
Right. Of which women are a little more at risk than men.
Exactly. And it's extremely scary the way that it's spreading. And statistically, they can tell you how many people have been diagnosed with AIDS, but literally we have no estimation on how many people are walking out in our society that are HIV positive.
Right.
And that scares me the most.
You bet. 292-3263, that's the number to call in. Don't let the topic scare you. I know it's something that's on your mind from time to time. So, we're always looking for input and viewer comments. That's 292-3263, which I'm sure will appear on your screen at some point.
I've got a question for Tim. Some guys out there, are the type that just don't feel like they have any responsibility, and they'll, do it and leave and not even worry about it. Do you feel then that the responsibility is put on the female?
Well, responsibility is up to both people, regardless if they choose to take those responsibilities, take them on or not. If they, now I had mentioned about the paternity tests that we have now that proves who the father is, and it's been developed a few years ago. It's making more so the importance of having the males take on the responsibility when they do create a pregnancy, a responsibility of whether they choose to stay with the woman or not. If they choose not to, well, then they have financial responsibility and child support payments, and that aspect of their responsibility must be followed through. If not, they can be legally taken to court, and if they still refuse to pay, or they can be put in jail, and it just creates a lot more problems. But I would rather have when I go out and talk about responsibility, I would rather focus more on prevention. Learn about birth control. Learn how to communicate with your partner. Talk about if you are going to be sexually active. Talk about whether you're going to use birth control or not. Talk about if you've ever had a sexually transmitted disease or not. These type of issues are not being discussed in, I believe, a lot of relationships, teenage relationships, which result into teen pregnancies, which is extremely high in New Mexico. And I consider our state, we have a large state and a small population compared to some bigger cities back east. And yet teenagers are going to be sexually active, but if they would learn how to communicate, learn and especially for males to break down these barriers and come forth and talk to their girlfriends or about these type of issues that need to be addressed before they're sexually active.
So that new test alone will make the guys start thinking at least.
Exactly, and I can't deny the area of sexually transmitted diseases, and now AIDS is in our society, which it's making our society become more desensitized with contraceptives and talking a little bit more about condoms and people using condoms. Actually, finding out about them, learning that you don't need to be a certain age to go get contraceptives, learning that you don't need your parents' permission to go buy contraceptives, but actually to change your behaviors and into a positive, constructive type of behavior where it's more healthier and responsible and mature for the younger adolescents and teenagers.
Do you think someone who doesn't really think much about AIDS before having sex, do you think they'll think about pregnancy?
Well, if they're willing to have sex, unprotected sex, they're willing to face the consequences, which are either death with a sexually transmitted disease like AIDS or a pregnancy, which is a lifelong responsibility. Mm-hmm. So, and those are very realistic, and I tell the kids that I do speak in front of that, I'm not there to tell them what to do. I'm there to present them with the best information to help them make the best decisions that they can, and hope that these type of decisions they do make are very healthy type of decisions and positive. Because if they don't, well, then we go back into these type of consequences where they have to all of a sudden they're a parent, they're a father, they're a mother, and the responsibility of being a father and a mother is a lot larger than they probably imagine until they're faced with it and confronted with it.
Since you started the class, have you found that some of the kids who can't really go to their parents, like Rudy here, do they come to you for personal questions, personal advice? Do they ever talk to you? Or?
Sure, I welcome their questions and whatever they have on their minds. The class that we did at Monsanto was a semester-long class. It was weekly. We go in for a couple hours and we do a variety of topics. And several times we would do, especially on birth control and sexually transmitted diseases, it carried over to the following week. And that's how interested the kids were, and how hungry they were for that information, because they didn't know. They just didn't know.
What type of tactic do you use? Do you use the go at the male? Do you use the scare tactic? Or what type of tactic do you use? Or is it just informative, just straight information?
Yeah, I don't believe in the scare tactic. I don't think that works. I think that just by presenting the information by the individual style and coming across to the students about being, just giving them the information and not trying to dictate to them, but trying to encourage them to make better decisions.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break for a brief moment, and we'll be right back.
Around the country, men are gathering in groups large and small to explore what it means to be a man in today's changing society. Discover what these men are saying about friendship, love, their families, and their work. Join us here on Channel 99 Review in its regular men's forum every first and third Sunday at 6 p.m. on public access television.
Welcome back to Public Access Channel 27. This is Channel 99 Review. This is the Men's Forum. We're talking about reproductive responsibility for men today. My name is Mike Rivas. I'm your host.
And I'm your co-host, Troy Neely. And we'd like to urge our callers to call this as a live call-in forum. The number is 292-3263.
And we're talking today with Tim Lopez, the Rio Grande Planned Parenthood program, and Rudy Silva, who's a student over at Monsanto High School, who's, I guess, a part of the counseling program that you do a little bit of. What are the One of the questions we had down to ask you that I don't think we have is, how are parents reacting to the programs you've been conducting with young people? Are you getting a lot of good parental response and involvement, questions and interaction?
We do have a few interactions with parents, but more so the teachers and students, and the type of response that we get from them has been very positive, especially for myself, being a male educator. And in fact, I would just like to say this one class that I did was I did a birth control class in front of.
You know, we have a call,
Oh, great.
and it's looked like line 3 is flashing.
Yes, I have a question for Tim. And that question is, I was dating a girl, and we went out, and we were going to have sex, and I wanted to use a contraceptive, but she didn't want to. And that created some type of problems. What help me get over that barrier?
So she did not want to use a contraceptive. And
She didn't.
You did. And you did. You were doing you were making a responsible decision.
I thought I was making a responsible decision by saying no to her because she didn't want me to wear a condom.
Okay, so you did not have sex with her.
I did not have sex with her. What kind of philosophy could I use to have her use a condom, use a contraceptive, because she didn't want to? Is there any suggestions you have?
Well, I would just like to say that if she did not want to use the contraceptives, and probably, I assume you were thinking about protecting yourself from pregnancy and also from contracting a sexually transmitted disease. So I would say that you made it a responsible decision, regardless what the outcome was. How did you feel about your decision that you made?
I was kind of angry that she didn't, want to use a condom and want to protect herself, and I didn't know how to react, so I just stopped the whole situation.
Okay, well, great. I think you made a very wise decision.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for calling. Thanks for calling. You can reach us at 292-3263. This is the Men's Forum section of the Channel 99 Review. We're talking with Tim Lopez of the Rio Grande Planned Parenthood program here, and Rudy Silva, who's a student at Manzano High School. Anything that we're down to about 4 minutes of program left. Anything you'd like to sum up or say? Do you have a phone number that people looking for information or getting in touch with you might be able to reach? Or
Okay, yes, I have a phone number. It's 265-5976 if they want to contact me. I also do classes I'm a community educator, so I do classes in schools, I do classes for groups. In fact, I forgot to mention that I did develop, Linda Phillips-Laher, our education director, and I developed a program specifically for male athletes in Albuquerque. Being a former student athlete in Albuquerque and also a student athlete at UNM, I thought it was a great opportunity to use this to talk to these group of boys and tell them about this.
we have another phone call.
Okay, great.
And thanks for calling.
Yes. I was wondering if I could ask you a question.
Is this for Tim?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
How old do you think it would be a wise age for you to start having sex?
I think when a person is responsible and mature enough to make a good responsible decision for anyone.
Age doesn't seem to make the difference.
Well, I can't deny the fact that teenagers are sexually active, but I would just rather hope that for an individual to be mature enough and responsible enough to make a good decision for himself and for the other person when the individual chooses to be sexually active.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
welcome.
very much for calling.
Bye-bye.
292-3263, that's the number. Do you go back to what you're saying about the athletes?
Oh, yes. I've been doing this program for athletes in Albuquerque and at the high schools. And also I've since done a few programs in Santa Fe at one of the high schools in Santa Fe and talking to the male athletes and talking to them about the responsibilities of and these male issues and presenting them in a way where, I'm real loose and real active with them.
You know, jocks get a lot of image and a lot of rap, but most of my, we have to wrap up pretty quick here,
Okay.
but most of my contact that I've found with young athletes, especially in high schools, of whatever sport, most of them seem fairly on the ball and keeping their grades up and trying to be responsive and tuned in. I think it's great you're doing that. We'd like to thank you, Tim, for being on the program. We'd also like to thank Rudy Silva for coming down and spending some time with us this afternoon. It's been real good having you guys here. There are repeats of this program of tonight's show at 1 p.m. Tuesday, Monday 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday at 9 a.m. Our next show will be in 2 weeks. That's Sunday, June 16th, Father's Day, 6 to 7. We urge fathers who would like to be interested to catch the credits, give us a call. We'd love to have you. And Rudy, Troy, you got some things to say about upcoming changes in the schedule?
Yeah, the changes in the schedule, they're going to be changing from the 1st and 3rd to the 2nd and 4th of each month on Sundays. The dates I have here. Yeah, the dates of that will be after the next show, which is June 16th. We'll have a 4-week break before switching to the 2nd and 4th Sundays. We'll return Sunday, July 14th, and every 2nd and 4th Sunday will be on the air.
We're always looking for input. We'd also like to thank Art Schreiber and the guys at KQAO Radio for having us on down there and looking at men's issues on one of their programs. Don't quit trying. Keep coming back. Come see us again. Bye-bye.
Ralph?